Why is every game a shooter?
Part 1. Why is every game a shooter?
This isn't much of a hot take. I'm not the first to point out this pervasive trend in games, but the problem is that most surface level viewings of this only scratch the surface of the existentially terrifying implications of all this. So I'll ask again, why is every game a shooter? And why can't I call Donald Trump a fascist?
Part 2. Why can't I call Richard Spencer a fascist?
You might think I'm getting ahead of myself here with this. Trust me, it's only going to get a lot worse. First of all, why am I bringing up Richard Spencer in this video about Apex Legends? It's only going to get a lot worse. Most people who don't have a rat central stick up their ass won't begrudge me calling Richard Spencer a fascist. I mean, the guy literally Nazi saluted my Indianapolis and wants an ethno-state. It's really not that hard to figure out. I tried as hard as I could to make sure Richard Spencer hasn't called himself a fascist. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like he has. Instead, using the weasel word he made up, the alt-right.
Part 3. The alt-right.
Now, I know what you're thinking. Look at the dirty commie calling everyone who disagrees with a fascist. It's only going to get a lot worse. When doing the research for this video, I thought the best place to start was with the definition of the term alt-right. And oh boy. The problem was trying to find when alt-righters can accuse of bias. This one from Merriam-Webster seems at least a bit fair.
A right-wing, primarily online political movement or grouping based in the U.S. whose members reject mainstream conservative politics and espouse extremist beliefs and policies typically centered on ideas of white nationalism.
I want you to keep this at the back of your mind, that the alt-right, at least partially, is described by its rejection of mainstream conservative politics. Okay. So back to the original question. Why can't I call Donald Trump a fascist? The surface level answer is because he doesn't call himself a fascist. So what right do I have to go around prescribing labels to people? Well, the real surface level answer is I can call him whatever I want, fuck off Nazi punks, but it doesn't make for a great video that. Either way, this isn't a good argument. Like I mentioned before, Richard Spencer doesn't call himself a fascist, and neither did, for that matter, Hitler. It's just that we figured out that if a guy models his party after Mussolini's fascist party, hangs out with him all the time, and generally behaves in every way like him, then they probably have a similar ideology. I mean, a pastor can say he's not gay all he wants, but if you're catching deep-throating a male prostitute's cock, I'm pretty sure we can make some assumptions. I'm pretty sure most people can agree to this. I mean, after all, calling yourself a fascist doesn't really give you a lot of social standing nowadays. In fact, it gives you so little social standing that calling someone a fascist is like calling them a Sith. It's a term of othering that, at least in the modern era, allows leftists like myself to avoid really having to confront the issues raised by people in the alt-right. The consequence is that, being so far removed from World War II, the word fascist really isn't enough. Because if you accuse someone of being what is in the modern consciousness the ideological equivalent of pure evil, you will be laughed out of the room. Instead, you need an argument. Leftists are too fucking pissed off at these people to really make one. In fact, I'm not even gonna make one. Because, like, other people have done it. I mean, like, I might do it sometime in the future. Just not now. Yeah. Because of all this, in the modern era, unless someone explicitly calls himself a fascist, you're not really gonna have anyone besides other lefties take you seriously if you end up calling someone that. In civilized discourse, the word is so loaded that the veracity of the claim doesn't even really matter. So for all my talk of the need for argumentation, you might have noticed that I've neglected to say exactly why Donald Trump's a fascist, and...
Part 4. So, is Trump a fascist? Part 5. What's a fascist?
Oh my god! So you're not going to believe this, but I found a really good description of classical fascism in Urban Dictionary of all places. I'm including here just because I thought that fact was really funny. It uses Benito Mussolini's statement of everything in the state, nothing outside the state, and nothing against the state to illustrate its point. Everything in the state. The government is supreme and the country is all-encompassing, and all within it must conform to the ruling body, often a dictator. Nothing outside the state. The country must grow, and the implied goal of any fascist nation is to rule the world and have every human submit to the government. Nothing against the state. Any type of questioning the government is not to be tolerated. If you do not see things our way, you are wrong. If you do not agree with the government, you cannot be allowed to live and taint the minds of the rest of the good citizens. While I would generally agree that the US right now doesn't really effectively compare to the fascist governments of Germany and Italy at the time, a lot of governments throughout history actually do. So let's talk about James VI, or James I. He was both. Long story.
Part 6. James VI.
The state of monarchy is the supremest thing upon earth. For kings are not only God's lieutenants upon earth and sit upon God's throne, but even by God himself are called gods. I will not be content that my power be disputed upon, but I shall ever be willing to make the reason appear of all my doings, and rule my actions according to my laws. I would wish you to be careful to avoid 3 things in the matter of grievances. First, that you do not meddle with the main points of government. That is my craft. To meddle with that were to lessen me. I must not be taught my office. Secondly, I will not have you meddle with such ancient rights of mine as I have received from my predecessors. All novelties are dangerous as well in a politic as in a natural body. And therefore I would be loath to be called in my ancient rights and possessions, for that were to judge me unworthy of that which my predecessors had and left me. And lastly, I pray you beware to exhibit for grievance anything that is established by a settled law, and whereunto you know I will never give a plausible answer, for it is an undutable part in subjects to question our king, wherein they will never be foreheld.
So that's James. What he's talking about here is the concept he's a huge champion of, the divine right of kings. The idea is the will of the monarch should be considered supreme above all else, because all monarchs are ordained by God. And the most important thing here is that the head of state, the king or queen in some cases, his will must never be questioned. His word is law. You're the king's subjects. You serve him and will die if needs be. To be fair to James, he was pretty anti-interventionist for his time, but he was really big on the whole conformity thing, creating the King James Version of the Bible, ending a lot of the religious toleration that his predecessor Elizabeth, not that one started, that sort of thing. You could probably detect a lot of fascistic elements to his code there, but it's not usually what we consider fascist. It could just be due to not wanting to question how things were in the past, but I think there's something more to it than that. I mean, a lot of leaders believed in the divine right of kings, and a lot of leaders have a lot more fascistic elements than James here. Genghis Khan, Francisco Franco, Vlad the Impaler. Even besides the more extreme examples though, you could argue that most governments throughout history have been somewhat fascistic. You could argue that the entire system of feudalism, something that existed during James's reign, is at least somewhat fascistic. All peasants are pretty much owned by the state, forced to fight and work for it, serve it loyally, and never speak ill of the nobility, especially not the king. The reason I bring all this up is because I don't believe in a prescriptive manner of reading the word fascism, but a descriptive one. What we mean when we say the word fascist in the 21st century, especially being so far removed from the zenith of their regimes, goes far beyond the definition of the actual word. There is something more.
Part 7. Get to the fucking point.
Why is every game a shooter?
Because they're fun. That's why.
Well, why is it fun?
Part 8. Things will get ugly.
When you shoot someone in Apex Legends, what do you see? Do you see Lifeline or Gibraltar, Bloodhound or Bangalore? No, you see a target. Something that must be destroyed if you are to survive. Something that must be eliminated without any hesitation on your part. Sounds kind of bad, doesn't it? It's because that's how fascists see the world. Now, I'm not saying put down your Call of Duties and your Apex Legends and then it's going to make you all fascists. In fact, I'm arguing something completely different. I'm arguing that these kinds of themes are more of a reflection of our own inner fascism. For background, there are 2 main revolutionary ideologies that took hold of governments in the 20th century as an alternative to capitalism: socialism and fascism. Socialism appeals to our desire for fairness in the world, the idea that people are entitled to the fruits of their labor. Whereas fascism appeals to our need for an enemy, the idea that societal ills are caused by a great other, whatever that is. This, to a certain extent, exists in Marxist thought too, the capitalist class being the great other. If you get too extreme with the othering, you get tankies saying they want to kill the rich and all that stuff. The difference is that in fascist thought, the in-group and the out-group are selected based off fundamentally arbitrary standards, honestly. Race, nationality, that sort of thing. And the narratives that are weaved against these people are mainly based off lies. If you take nothing else away from this video, take this away. Because fascism is definitionally based off of false othering, fascism is factually wrong. If I say fascism is wrong, that's not just a moral argument. That's a logical fact.
Part 9. Response to Zizek.
Let's take what Nazis claimed about the Jews. I think we have to go to the end here and claim, even if, okay, not all, I wouldn't go so far, but even if some of what they claimed was true, nonetheless, anti-Semitism was totally a lie, a fake. Why? I think that's my general point, that the moment you even think about endorsing, accepting discussion at this level, like for example, let's say, I don't know, I'm a Nazi, you are an honest liberal, and I say Jews seduce our young girls, Jews exploit us, and I say this. You say, no, this is a lie. Then comes a naive university neutral idiot and says, oh, it's difficult, let's take an objective look at it. You sell your soul to the devil if you do this. Because let's be clear, the result will be unambiguous. Yes, the Nazis exaggerated it, but not quite. Because wait a minute, now you say something horrible. Many Jews were also rich in Germany, so yes, they definitely exploited Germans. On the other hand, I hope so, it's normal. I think that some Jews definitely probably were seducing German girls. Why not? You know what I mean? Why is this false? Because the true, how to put it, the Nazis here, even if it were to be true, but it wasn't, of course, they lied in the guise of truth. Because the true question is not, is it true what they are claiming about the Jews? The true question is why, in order to sustain their politics, they need this fantasy of the Jew.
I remember pop philosopher Slavoj Žižek saying this a few years ago, and naturally given the topic of my first essay sprang to mind, it's influenced a lot of my philosophy, the idea that something can be untrue on two levels. The textual level, what the claim actually is, and the subtextual level, what the claim assumes inherently. In the case of Jewish people and the Nazis, not only were the Nazis wrong in that the Jews were not doing what they said, but they were wrong also in assuming that ghettoization, expulsion, and extermination was the way to stop it. In assuming that innocent Jews must be held responsible for the crimes of those who shared an identity with them. And in assuming that the threat of the Jews would be so great, the entire authoritarian movement was required to stop them. So I started to think, the Nazis are right on either the textual or the subtextual level, regardless of the morality of what they did, would they still be fascists? Some of this is going to be really uncomfortable for me to say, but bear with me here because I have to finish the video and everything. Under my definition, fascism would have to be at least wrong at the subtextual level, that being the veracity of their solutions to society's ills, though most times they're wrong on both fronts anyway. So, for example, if a fascist were somehow, let's just say for the sake of argument, to be right in assuming that the innocent Jews must be held responsible and all the other stuff, or wrong about what they said about the Jews, would they still be fascists? I would say no. For example, let's say that I'm part of a minority tribe in a desert country, and I say to my tribesmen, there's another foreign tribe who oppresses us, who force us to work without us even realizing it, who steal our babies away and use them for their own experiments. We have to rise up and drive them from our lands to achieve our own independence. What if everything I said was right? Then nothing's wrong, right? It's just one nice revolution story. But what if everything I say is wrong? Am I a fascist? I'd say no. A demagogue maybe, but not a fascist. Because, like I said, fascism is definitionally incorrect, independent of what it says about the people it focuses on. Because the solutions proposed are for the infinite propagation of itself, and the only way of forming a perpetual grand narrative around a group of people is through lies. No group of people warrant the measures fascism proposes, because what fascism proposes are not solutions for problems, but ways for elites to concentrate their power. So if you want a final definition of fascism, here you are. Fascism is an ideology that attempts to concentrate power in the hands of an elite class through focusing on factually incorrect narratives about a specific outgroup. When read like this, it's obvious that fascism, since it focuses on only concentrating power in the hands of an elite class, is not in the best interest of everyone, and therefore has to be opposed. So how do you do it?
Part 10. Fascism is not a legitimate opinion.
I don't really know. If you have any good ideas, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear. Direct violence seems only to galvanize them and earn them sympathy, so that doesn't work. We could try debating them, but fascism is actually a very attractive ideology to many people. Since we established that it is factually wrong and not in the best interest of society, we're right to deplatform them, and possibly even take legal action against them. I mean, spreading lies and disinformation is already illegal. It's just that fascists get away with it because they spread them around groups instead of specific individuals. So, at least you're right on that front. But inside of that, I'm not really sure what the most effective option is. Besides killing them tankies, we're not going to kill them. There's one thing we must establish, though. Fascism is not a legitimate opinion. It can't be treated as such, because it is wrong, and it is dangerous. And it's not so hard to do. Obviously, the leading fascist figures aren't going to be convinced, but many of the normal followers of these ideologies really can be. These are usually the greatest sufferers of capitalism and need something to latch onto so that something in their lives can improve. For example, white working class men, the group of victims of capitalism least likely to be affected by bigoted rhetoric, went for Donald Trump quite significantly. Now, I don't think Trump's a full-blown fascist, since he's yet to use his rhetoric to secure unconstitutional power for himself and his friends, at least permanently. However, Trump and Bernie, the representatives of the zeitgeist of American politics, are only incomplete forms of the ideologies that signal the end of capitalism, ideologies that reject mainstream capitalist politics. But wow, if only there was an alternative to capitalism that wasn't based fundamentally off lies and a desire to concentrate power. That was a teaser, by the way, for the next video. It's about socialism. Just letting you know. Yeah. Bye.